Alright guys, so today I'm just going to do a hopefully quick tutorial on how to get an Instagram feed into Bricks. So this is my Instagram feed here, and it's a standard UL. So if we look at this, so it's accessible. So we've got a UL followed by a bunch of LIs and then the actual Instagram content in there. Now, there was a forum entry here from November 21 where Timsy, who I've seen a lot around from Bricks, I'm not sure exactly how he's related to Bricks, but he seems to be one of the big players there. But he put up a answer here on how to use this instafeed.js library to display your items in Bricks. It's a very simple example. This is actually pulled from the description on the GitHub for that instafeed.js. And there's some information here, some links on how to set up the Facebook side of things. And yes, Facebook, you have to set up a Facebook developer app to access your Instagram and how to access your tokens for that as well. Now, I want this to be a little bit different to that because that basically gives you a single column of a div populated by a bunch of anchor tags or A tags under this with your Instagram items, which is not accessible. And I want it to be easily stylable as well. So I'm going to look through the two sides of this, which is the Bricks side first, and then look at the Instagram or Facebook side of it on how do we actually get our token here so that we can pull this information and display it. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the what we've done. So there's a 6-column grid on desktop, and we've got a little bit of an effect as we roll over. We're just dropping down, removing our shadow, dropping down by I think it's 5 pixels. But if we go to our responsive mode, we get to our mobile landscape, which is a Bricks breakpoint. We go to 4 columns, and we get down to our mobile, and we've got to 1 column. We've got a bit more spacing vertically than we did with the other grid layouts. So that's what we're going to achieve, and let's look at how we actually do it. So heading over to Bricks. So the code that I put in here, so basically it's a code block, and in this code block here, it's pretty much what was in this forum, and I'll link to this forum post as well. So it's pretty much what's in there, and but I've changed this div to a UL, and I've changed the template that it uses to render the results from Instagram to add an ally underneath that. So if we look at the options, I'm just going to open up the options here for that JS library. And here's our options here. So we need an access token, otherwise we can't access the Instagram. There's a bunch of stuff in here. The only ones that I'm using is the access token, the limit, so I'm only getting 12 items back, and I'm setting the template here. And the default template, it uses a mustache style curly brace syntax. All I'm doing is replacing that by putting an ally, wrapping this whole thing in an ally. So if we look at the actual Bricks here, all I've done with the template is just wrap the standard template in an ally. So I end up with a UL, and each one of these items is going to be an ally underneath that. And that's to make it more accessible. So the screen reader will get to it, and I'll say I've got a list of 12 items. Item number 1 is whatever it is. So that's the reason for that. Okay, and I'm going to obfuscate this obviously. So that's access. This access token is the one I've created from Facebook, and we'll need to go in the next step of showing you how to do that. But sticking with the Brick side at first. So what we have is our code block, which is basically, again, copy and paste, change that to a UL, put our access token in, set a limit, and set a new template so that we've got an ally wrapping our A. Okay, so heading up the structure here, so the instafeed, which is just a div I've put above the code, and I've given it a block name of instafeed block. And on here is where I'll put all the styles. And that's all we've done there. Actually, just go back to the desktop view. Now, this is actually I'm sure it's a fairly common method, but something I picked up that Kevin Gary was doing a lot with frames and the way he talks about structuring things, and it made a lot of sense to use CSS variables and reference those in your styles, so that when you go to breakpoints, for example, our mobile landscape, all I have to do is override the variables that I want to change. I don't have to have CSS rules here. I just have to override variables, and it keeps it very, very clean. So if I go to mobile, I go to one column with a gap of 2 rem, go to mobile landscape, go to 4 columns with a gap of 1 rem. And that's pretty much all I have to do to get this responsive grid happening. So I like the idea, so I'm going to stick with that. All right, so what we're doing is we're targeting our InstaFeed UL that we changed that to in the code, setting our display to grid, grid template columns to our columns variable, and our gap to our gap variable. Again, we override that on different breakpoints if we want to. Because we use the UL, we're going to get rid of the defaults. We get rid of the padding, margin, and set the list style to none. We just want it to display as a block of items. We don't want to actually display a semantic HTML list with bullets, etc. Okay, and then on the InstaFeed LI, we're going to set our box shadow to our variable and set our transition to our transition speed, transform speed, I should say. Probably should have called that transition speed. In fact, I might just change that now so it makes sense. So where are we? Transition. So it's not actually transform. There's a problem when you do these things. You get a little bit sidetracked and name things not correctly. Okay, so what we're doing is just setting the defaults on that. And then we hover our eye. We want to set our box shadow to our box shadow hover. Again, that's up here, and we can override those to the breakpoints. And we set our translate Y to transform Y hover variable. And that's all there is to our CSS, and that gives us this styled grid here. Okay, so that's it. And now what we're going to look at is how do we get this access token. Now, this is the part where people are finding it a little bit tricky, and there are some paid services that you can use that manage all this for you. You don't need to. It's not as hard as it sounds. All right, guys, so I just had to circle back to this when I was recording this morning. I don't know if there's a bug with Facebook or Instagram at the time, but I wasn't able to generate my access token. I kept getting an error. I don't know whether it's because I needed to use an incognito window for both my Facebook developer login and my Instagram, or whether they were just having issues. So I'm going to have another crack at this. So what we want to do is generate this token here for use with the bricks structure that we've created here. So heading over to the Facebook for developers, so developers.facebook.com. If you haven't got an account here, just sign up for one. It's free, and you can use your existing Facebook login if you like. I'm currently logged in, so I'm going to go to the My Apps area, and we're going to create an app. And for this one, we want it to be a consumer. Now, consumer means we're going to consume data from the API. We don't need to be able to put anything back to Instagram. We just want to read the latest post from there. So we just need a consumer application. Okay, I'm going to give it a name, which will be, I'll just call this Test Bricks. Hopefully this is going to work, because I've just deleted the old app, and maybe there might be some propagation delay. So I'm hoping this is going to work okay. That's all we need. Give it a name and hit Create App. And on this app, we need to then add an Instagram basic display. We're going to get a warning down here, which is telling us that we don't have a platform. I'm not sure if we really need to do that, but I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to go to Settings, and I'm going to add a platform. And I think what this does is tie it to your domain. So I'm going to put in the domain I'm going to use it on, or the full URL, to where I'm going to use it, and save the change. You don't need to fill any of this other stuff up top here. Okay, so that's done. The rest of this I'm going to leave as it is. Go back to my Instagram basic display, go to basic display settings, and now we don't have that warning anymore. So hit the Create New App button, and we'll leave the Instagram or app name exactly the same as our app name. Hit create app. And the other thing you'll note up here is we're in the app mode of development. We don't need to create a live app because we're not going to publish this for other people to use. We don't need any OAuth, because what you need all that for is that if someone's going to interact with an application that you've published, they need to authenticate, and that's what that's all about. So we can leave this in development mode and not worry about that. Okay, so we're going to ignore all of these settings. We don't need any OAuth because we're not going to be authenticating anything here. But what we need to do is generate some tokens. So we're going to hit down here on the add or remove Instagram testers and scroll down to Instagram testers. I'm going to add in a username for an Instagram account that we want to pull from. So WP, oops. So this is us here, WP Easy. So you'd use your own Instagram account and Instagram user. Submit that. Okay, so now we have a pending, what do they call it, a invitation. So we've got a pending invitation here, so we need to do something with that. So let's go to Instagram. And log into Instagram. Now, I think I'm going to need to copy and paste got this off screen so we can't share it with you. So we put our username for Instagram in there, which is the same as the one we used over here for the app, for the invitation. Have a nice strong password. I use a password manager, so all of my passwords are unique. There we are in Instagram. So our next step is to go into the more settings. We're going to go to apps and websites, and we'll see in our tester invitations, we've got a TestBricks application there. And this is where it was erroring last time. So if I hit the accept, it's accepted it. So it must have been, it's either an incognito issue or there was an issue with Instagram at the time. So we've accepted that. So head back over to our Facebook and just refresh this page. And now we've got an Instagram tester there, and it's not pending anymore. Go back to our basic display, click on that, and now if we scroll down, we've got this user token generator. Because we've got an authorized user, that's just come up there. Now this is another part where it failed last time, so I'm hoping this is going to be okay. I've already logged into Instagram, so that might be okay there. If it's not, then you'll need your Instagram details. Hit the generate token. Error. Okay, this is what I was getting last time. All right, so then we click the generate token button. And what we have to do now is log into Instagram with the user that we just approved. So I'm just going to grab my login for that. Just as a side note, I was having a hell of a time getting this to work. And what I've just done is, even though I'm incognito, I've gone into my application. So just under here, I've gone to the application. I've deleted everything to do with Facebook, gone to my cookies, deleted everything to do with Facebook, logged back in, and now it appears to be working. So there's something that it is putting there that's getting in the way. Let's just log into our Instagram. Okay, we don't want to save our details. Now this should generate a token for me. So I'm going to allow. And there's my token there. I understand. Copy. Done. And back to our bricks here. And we're going to replace that access token with this one. Just got a new access token there. Hit save. This doesn't work in the editor, but if we look at this on the front end, we now have our Instagram feed working. So it's pretty easy to do. The biggest problem I had was trying to regenerate this token. The reason was because I generated a token and then I went back in, deleted the details, and then tried to regenerate another token, and Facebook just didn't like it. But deleting all of the applications, local storage and cookies, and then going back in there, allowed me to correctly generate the token. So that's all there is to it. I think it's a pretty easy thing to do. So it's not as bad as it looks. It's just a couple of little quirks with Facebook when you're deleting and adding tokens. Okay, so I hope that is useful for you. I will put a link to the code here. So you got something to start with, a link to the forum that I got the original information from, and I hope that works for you. And if you like this kind of thing, hit the subscribe, hit the like. Thank you.